I'm still really curious about like how do we disentangle how recommendations of information influence the way that we interact with each other, how we interact with ourselves, how we see our place in the world, and all of that.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AI Download. We are your weekly show where we break down the biggest news stories and trends in AI with the leaders behind those stories. I'm your host, Shira Lazar. And before we get into the show, a huge thank you to our sponsor, Hivelighter. They're your AI powered reading assistant, bringing you smart, personalized insights so you can spend less time scrolling and more time doing. Go to hivelighter.com. And coming up on today's show, our next guest I met at a dinner and was blown away by the work she's doing. Listen to this. She got her PhD from Harvard and is a computational social scientist, scholar, and strategist whose work bridges artificial intelligence, transformative justice, and youth well-being. She finished her postdoc at Cornell, and she's currently a professor at University of California, Riverside. She also has a new book out called A Kid's Book About AI Bias. Dr. Avriel Epps, welcome to the AI Download. It's such an honor to have you here. I know we've been trying to do this forever, and I'm so excited to finally make it work.
Same. I'm so happy to be here. So honored that you invited me to come be a guest on your show.
Well, you're working on such incredible things that are moving the needle and are so needed. I wish more people were doing your work, but this was your gift and this is, what you were meant to do, obviously here on this earth in this life. But let's get into it because your work is centered in social justice, especially in AI. So what does that mean right now?
It means everything. We are at a significant crossroads in our kind of socio-political history. Technology is a central element in this story right now. I mean, it always is, right? Whatever the new technology is of the time is often weaponized against the undesirables, quote unquote, in the society. And this time, it's machine learning, artificial intelligence, and we see that in everything from social media algorithms to facial recognition, surveillance technologies to weaponry used by the military. It just kind of everything that is scary in this moment for marginalized folks somehow touches or is touched by artificial intelligence.
Very overwhelming. Like, where do you even start with solutions, right? And who's going to make it happen?
Yeah, I've the minute the minute that sentence came out of my mouth, I was like, "Wow, what a positive note to start an episode of a
We're being
podcast."
real. Let's get real.
Wow, I'm a buzzkill. Um, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. This is not a new struggle. Angela Davis says freedom is a constant struggle, and, the struggle for freedom in a kind of technologically or socio-technical, reality like the one we're in right now, um, is not really all that new, right? We actually can look to the struggles of the past, the civil rights movement, the abolitionist movement, liberation struggles kind of all over the world to see how people who had the odds stacked against them, in terms of like the distribution of power in a society, were able to organize themselves and work together to create a more just reality for the generation after them. But ultimately, the solution is everyday people like you and me and the folks in our immediate communities learning how to organize ourselves against these really powerful folks who have a lot of resources and maybe not our best interests at heart.
Totally. It's really, and what you mentioned, not just an online solution, an offline solution too,
That's right.
which I
Yes,
find fascinating.
I agree. I think I'm highly skeptical of folks who propose purely technical solutions to these problems. It completely ignores the fact that it's human beings who created the conditions for bias in AI to exist or for surveillance technologies to be abused. So Yeah, when folks are like, "Oh, yeah, if we just change the model weights here or, tweak the algorithm a little bit over here," like, um that's not the way to think about this. We have to think much more broadly, like, on a societal level of, like, how do we change the way that we relate to each other? How do we change the way that we relate to our work such that we're not just concerned with high productivity at the cost of everything else, right? That's where we get like a reliance on large language models so quickly, because folks are looking for shortcuts because we're incentivized to produce as much as possible, even at our own detriment.
Yeah, and the hope is the technologists and the people developing that are aware of those conversations, right? It's not those conversations and those solutions aren't happening in a vacuum.
Yeah, so not only should technologists be aware of those conversations that are happening, I firmly believe that technologists, folks who think about social theories and like community organizers, folks on the ground who are good at putting those theories into practice, like that is the trifecta that needs to like be in constant communication with each other to try to fix some of these problems. And also that internal work of where am I not healed? Where do certain aspects of humanity make me feel uncomfortable? Where am I not fully acknowledging my full humanity? That is the work that technologists need to be doing as well. Because if you're creating technology from an unhealed place or from a place of feeling resentful about the society around you or the people who you deem as scapegoats or whatever, you're inadvertently going to um, code those things into reality as well.
Yeah, it's like almost like OpenAI needs to have emotional intelligence sessions and therapy on site, hopefully, or, these are the things they should be having, like, you know, 20% of maybe the work should be in that and personal growth, send them for some ayahuasca. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like the ayahuasca is already happening, but yes, yes to all of
Yeah,
that.
that's true. These people are going up Burning Man. You don't get healed at Burning Man necessarily. But yeah, and doing whatever ayahuasca wherever they're doing it. But you know what I'm saying? Like I
Totally.
feel like that needs to be part of the work where we are, breaking down our internal biases and seeing how that's impacting how we show up in the world, our relationship with self and others and what we're creating.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder when we are building a reality with technology where we're trying to optimize for convenience and the cost of convenience is isolation. Right? You don't have to walk outside of your door to go get your food because somebody comes and drops it off at your doorstep, and you don't have to interact with any other people to do that, right? That's one example. You have to then question, why am I and all of my contemporaries, my peers, trying to, like, design away all the human interactions in our lives? Like, that to me is like, "Hello, hi," like, there's something happening internally there where we're, like, not fully appreciating what it means to be human.
Yeah,
Um,
like lean into convenience or lean into support, but then when it gets into isolation, that's the flag,
mhm,
right? I
totally.
mean, that's what my therapist said recently. She goes, "I'm worried that you're isolating yourself." Right? She's not, like there's a difference between like, "Oh, I'm really happy that you get to create more content, but are you seeing people?"
Well, that's the thing, like, when I'm deep in community, I actually am really bad at creating content. I actually don't wanna be on the internet. Like, when I'm in the room with my kids and all their friends are over and, there's people all around and there's commotion happening, like, yeah, maybe there's some frustrating things. There's a lot of, what's the word? Friction in those interactions. And also, like, my desire to be online and scroll endlessly goes way, way, way down and enjoying
You're
my
living
friends.
your life. I think there's two things. People either think that something's wrong because you're not, or there should be maybe an assumption. Yeah, you're out there, you're living your life. You're not just connected, overly connected. But with that and your work, I guess, like The work you're doing is so specific. What does AI bias even mean to you? How do you define it?
That's a great question. I am trained as a data scientist, so I do understand that for some folks, bias in machine learning is, a systematic error that happens with a model. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Um, but for me, when I'm talking about algorithmic bias or bias in artificial intelligence, I'm talking about those systematic errors that it first in some way concretize or reinforce existing historical oppressions, right? So it's not just that a content recommendation algorithm prioritizes one gender of content creators over another. It's that it prioritizes a gender of content creators over another such that the group or the gender that has always been privileged or has been privileged for a long time continues to receive those advantages or those privileges. And on the flip side, the group that's been disadvantaged pre that technology continues to be disadvantaged by the technology.
So if AI is reflecting society and what's happening and all this still is happening, how do we remove the bias from AI?
I mean, that's really difficult. I don't know if anyone has there's no silver bullet for that, right? Because one, because bias can be introduced at a bunch of different points in development. Of course, folks are probably most familiar with biased data sets creating biased models, and that's certainly true. I mean, so long as we've been collecting quantitative or qualitative data about all of the things, society's biases are reflected in that, right? We have usually powerful people who are in charge of collecting or generating that data. And sometimes they're collecting and generating data about groups that are much less powerful than them. So that in itself creates some kind of inequity. And then, of course, sometimes the groups that have less power are just like not reflected in the data sets at all, right? Because the people who are generating the data are not interested in those groups of people, so they don't even try to collect the data. Like a good example of that is like the dearth of indigenous languages that are represented in some of the data sets that are used to train large language models. But, there are also a lot of modeling choices that are made as an algorithm is being developed, what the model is being optimized for, what's being penalized, all of those things also can introduce forms of biases in the final product, and so that comes down to how do you train the technologists, the computer scientists who are building those models to think much more broadly, or to at least consult and bring in the perspectives of people that are very different from them to help think through the trade offs a little bit more critically when they're making those choices. That's kind of the like DEI work that technologists
You
need
want
to
to label it. Yes.
yeah, exactly. Um, the being a good human that cares about the collective good work that needs to happen. So that's a little bit easier of a problem to solve than like the biased data training the models. And then another potential area for solution is just like thinking very critically about when AI should be applied to a problem
Mm.
as a solution. It's also what are the incentive structures for corporations, organizations, et cetera, who want to kind of build things quickly and deploy them quickly and are looking to take those kinds of shortcuts that end up having disastrous effects for, certain parts of the population.
Yeah, I mean, the space is moving so quickly. I would imagine, especially if you're already in the place where these things aren't a priority, or like that's unfortunately your blind spot, which is horrible to say, right? And is not an excuse. But then if you're building quickly, you're not going to think about that, unfortunately, if you don't understand the nuances and you've been in a place of privilege, right? You're not taking the time to do things properly. I wonder if, Was your take on, and OpenAI is not the only company I wanna focus on here, but when OpenAI was a nonprofit, did you have hopes? And then when it became a for profit, it goes, "Okay, this is gonna happen again. This is not gonna go well."
don't think a nonprofit model inherently makes something make sense. The same kind of like capitalistic logics in the for-profit space apply to the nonprofit space when you think about how folks are competing for resources. Philanthropic funders are your customers in a way, and their desires and needs are kind of you know, can sometimes be just as problematic as, like, the desires of, like, the market, and the needs of the market, or at least how people kind of respond to them can be just as problematic. So, yeah, I don't think I see nonprofit AI company and automatically think, like, "Oh, great, they're gonna do a good job." Um so yeah, there's that. What makes me hopeful are organizations, whether they're nonprofits or kind of take like a cooperative model, like a profit sharing model with not just the folks who are building the technology, who are like the employees or like the members of the organization, but also with the communities that they're hoping to serve, and folks who are really building technology with the needs and the community front and center, not just the ideas and the whims of the, like, founder or the technical team or whatever.
Yep.
So that's kind of that's what I'm experimenting with my team at the nonprofit that I run in addition to my work as a professor called AI for Abolition. And we work intentionally very slowly. We work at the speed of trust, and it takes a so that's not me, that's Adrienne Marie Brown, but, it's such a brilliant phrase because we work at the speed of these communities that we engage, trusting us, and these are deeply skeptical communities. There are folks who have been wronged by society, by researchers, by, doers, builders, nonprofit leaders over and over and over again. Um, and so, it's not the same kind of move fast and break things development cycle that you see even in a lot of AI for good nonprofits.
Yeah, and I love that. I really love that, and it's unfortunate. Yeah, money makes us do things really quickly, even if it's not the right approach, and then tweak along the way. And I think even if you're going to do that, the idea is taking accountability and making change right away. But the amount of stuff that's been put out, even from companies like Meta, that have led to really weird things like um, talking to children, underage, people inappropriately and sexually, like at that level, even that you're putting out a tool that could potentially do that. Like, how did you not even poke those holes? Like, there's certain things that sometimes come out that I'm like, how did no one see this coming or even test this out?
Well, not even how did no one see this coming? Like the internet was literally built on sexual exploitation. Like, so I guess I don't even think that people are not I think the men who are making the decisions at the big tech companies have just thrown their hands up and been like, "Sexual abuse is just a natural part of the internet," or something. I don't know, because this is what we see these tools being used for, like child sexual abuse materials being generated by image generators, like, chatbots encouraging young people to commit suicide. Like, to me, as somebody who has studied the history of the internet, all of that is kind of like a no duh that this would happen. Why haven't we tried harder to solve these things yet? And it feels like they've kind of just given up. And any attempts to regulate the space just to mitigate those worst of the worst outcomes have been, like, shot down or, like, they've hired the best lobbyists to make sure that that kind of regulation doesn't get passed. So, Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could tell you the psychology behind those
Like, how do
decisions.
these things are tested? Like, we interviewed someone that, is a creator that goes into these focus groups, right, and tests these things, and she had done a prompt um, and a photo came back of her basically, like, naked on a beach or something like that, like, I I'm doing a little broken telephone here. So, but it was basically an inappropriate picture of her that they came back with. And so she flagged it to the team. This was a focus group. And they're meant to do, do these things and find these things in this process. But again, the fact that it didn't have any sort of, yeah, approaches to it in the code, or I don't know how it's built, that would say, yeah, don't do this is really bad. And also now it's coming out that AI will validate you. That also scares me if the machine is built on bias and then the person using it is biased and they're just validating each other. What happens?
Right. I mean, delusion on the part of the humans probably is what happens. I don't know, we'll see, like, long term what this leads to. We need much more intensive critical AI literacy happening in the communities that have historically been shut out of these conversations, and to be fair, that's not just people of color, that's not just women, that's not just kids, it's the majority of people, like, working class white men are not the folks who are, like, showing up to the panels that Sam Altman is talking at, you know what I mean? Like, it's the majority of people, so, this is why I'm so passionate about creating resources like a kid's book about AI bias, where it is very plain, simple language, 90-second TikToks that speak to folks who comprehend at a 6th grade level, right? The majority of Americans. Um, to try to demystify and welcome people into these conversations, knowing that they have been intentionally, locked out of them.
Let's talk about that. Perfect segue to your book, a kid's book about AI bias. But basically, we're all kids at heart and we could all use this. We just need things to be simple. For kids, it's for adults too. That's how I feel.
Absolutely.
Is that true? Is that how you made it?
That's exactly how I made it. There's so many beautiful, rich texts that I have learned from over the years from, some of my mentors like Sophia Noble, Ruha Benjamin, Meredith Broussard, these, like, luminaries in this field who have exposed some of these harms. And most of those texts are written at a college reading level. And I am, in addition to being trained as a data scientist, I'm also trained as a developmental scientist. So I think about how do we make things accessible for kids a lot. And the beauty in that is that when you make things accessible for kids, you make them accessible for a lot of other people too. And so my dream when I was writing this book was that, like, a grandparent and their grandchild would sit and read this together, and they would both be able to have a conversation about something that felt very new to both of them. Um, and that the person who has to work multiple jobs to support their family or is never gonna go back to college or maybe never did go to college, has enough time, 30 minutes at the end of the day, to sit down and just learn a little bit about this topic with their kiddo. And then that will open up many more conversations that they have as they interact with the technology in their daily lives.
So, what's the framework? Is it like AI is like the human brain? Is it like that? Like comparing things like that in a very simple way?
Um, not quite. I mean, I don't shy away from, like, what AI is, which is taking in a lot of information, which we call data, trying to use math to find the patterns in that information, and then make predictions about what we might see in the future based on what we have seen or collected information about in the past. Um,
Much better than what I just said.
but our
I'll
brains
let I'm not I'll let you keep your day job.
our brains do
I'll move back to my day job.
Our brains do that. Our brains are great pattern recognition machines. So, That's not a bad analogy at all. But
Yes.
most of us don't think about our brains as collecting a bunch of information, computing all the patterns, and then making predictions on a moment to moment basis. But yeah, both AI and our brains do that. And
And
then
what else? Yeah.
and then I give some examples of where young people might interact with AI, both in ways that they are probably very aware of, like when they're using a selfie filter on TikTok or Snapchat and it changes their face in some way. Um, and also where AI might be showing up in their lives and they're not thinking about it. Like, do you know that your doctor might use AI to help deliver your healthcare, or that a police officer might use AI to decide whether or not they're going to come to your neighborhood that day? And then help them understand how in healthcare or with doctors, with police officers, with teachers. There have been biases across those fields for a very long time. And so sometimes we see those same biases show up when it's a computer making the decisions rather than a human being. And I
Which
guess
these
that's the
are
book.
heavy issues to unpack, especially for kids, power, hierarchy. How do you break this down and simplify it?
Hmm. I think it's interesting. I start from a place of assuming that kids actually already understand these topics really well. You just need to put language to it. So you think about like my 6-year-old, since he was 4, he has been saying, "That's not fair." Right? He understands when things are not equal, not just. Or lately, his favorite thing is to tell other kids, "You're not the boss of me," especially when they're older kids. So then it's like, okay, here's a power dynamic at play. This person has more power than you because they're a few years older than you, and they do feel like they can exert that power over you and you feel that tension. So like it's more so just pointing out for them and giving them the language that adults use to validate the experiences that they're already having. And then showing them that those experiences can happen with technology too, which is the novel concept, right? That's not something that's super intuitive, but once you make that connection, I feel like it's pretty straightforward. So I created this like interactive card game to go along with the book that's free. Anybody can download it and play it with their kid. And it's got all these experiments that you can run on your devices that are based off of like science in the field. One of them is to ask a language model to generate an image of an American and do that 10 times. So I did this with my kiddo, and, obviously, he's got a little bit of an advantage. I'm his mom, but, like, when we were doing it, he was like but as it was generating, it was really blurry still. He's like, "Oh, it's gonna be a white guy. It's totally gonna be a white guy. Oh, yeah, uh-huh, it's gonna be a white guy." And then when it was a white guy, he was like, "Yep, I knew it." And I was like, "Oh, okay. So, like, your brain is also recognizing the patterns, and we've put the language to it, and now you kind of know what to expect." And instead of him being, like, not critical of that, he has kind of externalized, like, "Oh, this is what the computers do," and, like, there's something a little bit wrong and off about that. Um, because one of the things I don't want for kids, is for them to have a selfie filter, for example, lighten their skin tone in some way or straighten their hair if they've got curly hair, and then them somehow internalize that as like, "Oh, there's something wrong with me because the computer thinks I should be different." Like, that is the thing I'm trying to protect them against, with this information.
Yeah, and having them be aware because it's been so normalized, even with adults, right? We don't, I think even at our age, we have peers that are doing this stuff and aren't unfortunately aware of what's happening,
That's right.
right? I mean, which is crazy. But let alone like the fact that you're educating the next generation so they're prepared to understand the world that we live in and how it's shaping us, especially with technology, is just so important to begin to have some sovereignty as well as call each other forth and these companies forth.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
I just think that's so cool. I guess so. Yes, go get this book. Go get the cards. I do want to have. I have a few other quick questions because it kind of relates to the book, but then also how you approach some things and you've talked about on your social. One was like, why do you hate AI selfies? Right, that was one of them, which kind of goes back to what you just said because a lot of them do things to you that are clearly, you know, uh, racist.
Yeah, I mean, hate's a strong word. There are very few things that I hate in this world,
Yes.
but, I think it's one of those technologies that's actually fairly dangerous without trying to sound too hyperbolic, because it's something that is seen as fun and innocuous and, like, very normal. You get like, maybe Gen Z, Gen Alpha is slightly different in this way, but as a young millennial, selfie filters are synonymous with getting on Instagram, right? And so, it was just not problematized in the way that I think it should have on a massive scale. And, had we all thought a little bit more deeply about the fact that sometimes they whitewash features or they don't work well for certain people, and that reflects racism or sexism or ableism or any of those things, then maybe it wouldn't be so dangerous, but it's just seen as this super fun and frivolous thing. And then I think the potential psychological impacts of folks interacting with these things and them deforming your features in some way is is pretty insidious in that it ends up being pretty insidious. Um, so I'm always like, what are like the sneaky things that people are not really thinking about? It's not as blatant as deep fake porn or something. It's not like that is like, duh, we can point at that and say that's bad. But most people are not interacting with deep fake sexual abuse material on a daily basis. I think that's why I have, like, such a hyperfixation on selfie filters.
But these are important things that, again, this is why I even do this show. Like, how do we help each other look at things in a different way? And that influences what we create, what we consume, and how we show up, right? Especially in an AI future world or where we're at now, because it's pretty much there now, without us even realizing it. And also, streaming platforms too. You've called out or called forth.
Yeah, I mean, so much of my research focuses on content recommendation systems.
Mm.
I think that's partly because in my past life, before I became a researcher, I was a musician, so I was thinking a lot about, like, how art and different media get recommended to people. Um And so I kinda just fell into that line of work, but I think that that is important because it didn't play an insignificant, role in the political moment that we're in right now. I don't think that, like, YouTube is the reason why we are a politically polarized society. I think that there are a lot of people who wanna point to social media algorithms and say, like, that is the reason why we are in the political moment that we're in, like, full stop, and that is not the only reason, there are a lot of other factors at play, and also, it is a significant piece of the puzzle. So, yeah, when I'm thinking about content recommendation systems, it comes from a place of like, I've always been a creative and therefore a content creator, I guess. And so I'm have like a personal interest in this. And also like I'm still really curious about like how do we disentangle how recommendations of information influence the way that we interact with each other, how we interact with ourselves, how we see our place in the world, and all of that.
It's almost like recommendations that are like based on what you've watched and what you like, this is what you should continue watching. And then maybe the exact opposite to what you watch and like. Also, I find AI influencers and these AI voices can also be really problematic. And I'm sure you know this as well, right? Uh, like obviously using AI models, you're wanting to have quote unquote diversity but in using AI, it's inherently like the new blackface.
Yes, 1,000%. There's so many issues with AI influencers. I don't even know where to start, girl.
I know, I guess, like, what can we take away from this when it comes to, yeah, the work you're doing and, approaching it differently?
I think that's
Maybe
just like
just not do it. Just
yeah,
don't
that's
use
exactly
AI
what I was gonna
influencers.
go say. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Like earlier when I was like, maybe we should think about where AI shouldn't be applied. Like creating fake humans to sell you things. I don't know if we need that. I don't know. I don't see the benefit. Like there's no clear benefit that to that use of water and energy. Um Unless we're talking about creating really culturally relevant, culturally specific, like, information that otherwise would be impossible to produce with given the resources we have to, like, create some kind of benefit for a severely underrepresented group. But here's the thing, we literally do not have the AI to be able to do that right now. Like, there's there just isn't. Think about, like, the most, like, underrepresented group in a population. The data that we have to be able to create an AI contains that underrepresentation. So, like, we actually don't have the technology for that use case. So, like, I just again, it's like one of those examples of we don't need to have this.
And just watch what you share. I would just say watch what you share, watch what you use. If you're a company, again, watch how you're using it and beware, you will be called out. It will not be a good look. Like, I think these are just important things um, to remind people of, to double down on. I think, I don't know if I met someone that was archiving all these indigenous languages. And again, this isn't someone outside the community. I think that technologists need to see gaps
Yes,
and connect with people in those communities to really build together. And I think that was such an amazing use of AI, like archiving history, archiving art, archiving uh, community history, like the archival purposes of, uh, I don't know, putting it through AI so that we can make sure like future generations are rebuilding in the right way is really important.
absolutely. I 100% agree with that. The communities themselves have to be in control, and the technology has to be built with them and not for them by some outsider.
So finally, because we've covered so much ground, and you have such a unique and important perspective on this, I guess, how can we prepare ourselves and this next generation for the tech revolution that is coming when it comes to AI?
There's a few things. I mean, the first is to, like, truly understand how much data you are producing just by, like, living your daily life, and how to access that data and learn the tools at your disposal to manipulate that data in a way if you ever wanted to. Um I have a dream that I talk about often. It's not my idea, but I am evangelizing it at this point that we need to create data labor unions. And the data laborers who need to unionize are all of us who produce the raw materials that power this technology. Um, the other piece of it is really continuing to practice um, deep critical thinking when you're interacting with technology. People talk about media literacy as being so important, like, you know, being able to identify when something is a deep fake, for example. And that's part of it. But there's another deeper layer to it, which is the analysis of power. Who benefits from this? Um, who profits from this? And what are the patterns in that when I'm identifying those things across the board. um and you know, adults and children need to learn those skills and how to be constantly in a process of asking those questions when you're interacting with any piece of technology. And then I think the other thing is really trying to take intentional like sabbaticals, for lack of a better word, from taking in all of the information constantly. It's really hard to have good media literacy when you're drinking from a fire hose of information, right? And media literacy and critical AI literacy really depends on a strong internal sense of what your how your body physically reacts to what you're experiencing. Like, there is a somatic awareness that you have to be a critical consumer of any piece of media or technology. And when you're drinking from that fire hose, you inherently are cut off from that. So you have to take breaks and take time with your physical body and see your brain as part of an entire physical body nervous system that runs through the entire, all of your appendages, etc. Um, to connect to that internal wisdom that then will be useful when you have to eventually re-engage with the tech and media ecosystem.
I mean, double tap on that. So important. Everyone check in with yourself. Don't just check in with the tech constantly and doom scroll. We are wrapping, but before we do, I do want to hear from you an AI tool you want to share that you love, that you feel doesn't have as much bias. I saw that you did. I just want to just give you credit, Canva, how you did search something there and it showed more of a diversity. So Canva seems to be doing some decent stuff maybe with their AI, but any other tools?
Yeah, for sure, that's a good point. I think of the image generators, Canva, of the ones that I tested, at least like the, big name ones, they were doing the best. There's still some gaps. They got some room to improve. But yeah. Um, I don't know about a specific AI tool that I like recommend. But there is this organization called the Collective Intelligences Project that I think is super cool, and they are building constitutional models, through this, like, democratic process of bringing a bunch of different people together to kind of vote on the values and that they want a model to have, and then figure out how to, build a constitution to guide or put guardrails up on the model. And they do that with lots of different communities around the world who have different needs. And, so I think that's, like, a really interesting approach to, fine-tuning models and developing them, and I'm always curious to see the stuff that they put out.
So many great things you've shared with us. I hope you've enjoyed learning as much as I did. Thank you so much, Dr. Avriel Epps, for being here.
Thank you.
Follow her everywhere at King Avriel on TikTok, Instagram. Plus, please buy her book out now, a kid's book about AI bias for your kids or maybe yourself or the adults in your life. What a great gift. Link in the show notes and description. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Big hug.
Thank you, this was great.
And of course, another big thank you to our series sponsor, Hivelater. You've got to check out the AI Download Collection, where we basically have curated all the top headlines from our show, previous episodes, so you can catch up on all the top AI stories, share them with your friends, or even colleagues. Click the Hivelater link in our show notes to get smarter. And thank you so much to Muso Media for producing and editing this series. Check them out at musomedia.com. If you love this episode, subscribe, rate, and share it. It helps me keep growing the show independently. We've got so much more coming your way, so I'll see you next time on the AI Download.